All right, we're live. We're back, party people. It's your host Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Thanks to our sponsor, Raz Rocket. Your fundraise on autopilot. Today, I'm joined by Gasson. Gasson, how are you today?
Looking amazing. Thank you.
Looking amazing. Where in the world are you calling it from?
Today I'm in Switzerland, in Zurich, but I'm based in New York City.
Awesome. So Gasson, we're going to get into your backstory. We're going to talk a little bit about your aha moment around AI. We're going to talk about your company. But since we're going to get to the company part of the end, if you can just maybe share a line or two about what you guys do. I found it fascinating on a personal note, but maybe give people a little bit in terms of, what you guys do.
Sure. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Incivio. We help fintech platforms like trading platforms, crypto exchanges increase transaction volume using our agentic layer that basically helps their users not only navigate, but transact more on their platforms.
Got it. Awesome. So let's start back with your story. I was reading a little bit about it this morning. Quite fascinating. So you're from Tunisia, is that correct?
Correct. I'm originally from Tunisia. I've been a founder entrepreneur for the last 15 years, mainly building businesses at the intersection of fintech and AI. AI is just a rebranding to me. I'm a machine learning engineer. Back then, we called it data science, and I was always fascinated by the application of mathematics, data in multiple different sectors, and especially in financial services. What brought me there is basically the fact that mathematics as a concept helps you understand a lot of things in life, and I think one of the most important elements of life is financials, money, financial literacy for everyone. And I was always surprised that we are not using technology for that vertical of our life. That's how I ended up always be it buy now, pay later, trading, crypto, lending. I always find myself on those verticals using data.
Interesting. So you also spent some time as an actuary, is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, that was the way I could use data in the insurance space. So after becoming a machine learning engineer, I was working also as back then called a BI consultant, business intelligence consultant. That was 15 years ago. That's crazy how things have changed. And we were doing multiple projects for insurances. And as you know, insurances, they have a ton of data even back then, and they were not using machine learning to do whatever with that data. And that's how I figured myself out, hey, if you do all those models, actually that job is called an actuary. And that's why I moved to Switzerland, where I studied actuarial science. And that's how I discovered the art of mathematics within the insurance space. So it's the hat of risk plus the hat of data science that made me, let's say, close to risk in terms of analytics, but close to taking multiple risks in terms of life.
That's fascinating. I don't know, I want to say, maybe I won't say the number of years because I'll be dating myself, but I actually embarked on the journey of selling life insurance, along with the whole slew of financial solutions way back in the day. And so I had a little bit of exposure to that world. But were you doing actuary for what? Because there's so many different types of angles. Was it for life insurance? Was it for other types of insurance?
So the good thing is with the actuary is you are basically the modeler behind every model. So you don't need to be a specialist in life or car or whatever type of insurance. Basically, every type of insurance where you pay a certain premium, there are a lot of calculations behind that, and that's the job of the actuary to do. So don't be stringent on the number, but basically in each insurance, for each, say, 1,000 employees, you have one actuary, just to give you an idea. So it's kind of the architect behind all those modelings. And then obviously when you model, when you model catastrophe events or financial risk or car insurance is completely different thing. But at the end of the day, it's all of the law of big numbers. And if an event is happening frequently enough, you are able to model it. I don't want to be too nerdy with this, but basically it's data related to certain events, and the job of the insurance, the actuary, is to quantify the impact of that incident and put a price on it to make sure that the business model is working for the people who are insured and for the insurance as well.
Cool. So I was reading about it. You founded 6 startups. So what was the most painful lesson from the one that didn't make it?
Many painful lessons, and I think I'm learning one each day almost. But let's put it this way. I think one very painful lesson is culture is really everything, even within the tech company or whatever. Look, I'm a nerd. I'm like, I think like when I hire, for example, I was like, okay, I look first at the quantitative skills. If the person can do the job, then we work together. And one of the painful lessons I learned is like, it's not like that. Like, it's actually better to have a cultural fit, and the person is not that good as at that task versus the person is very good at that task and not a cultural fit, because it ends up being really a disaster. That was a very, very painful lesson I learned, I think, in my last startup. I can think of like 2 startups back. Another lesson is, well, if it works, it does not mean it will scale. If I dig deeper there, like you can have multiple clients, but if you see at the end of the road, this will not go anywhere, it will not scale. You better start thinking about a different way, because everything else in the meantime is an illusion. So it depends, obviously, in what purpose you're building that business. If you want to scale a business, if you want to have an impact with your business, and by
Hey,
impact,
hey,
yes.
sorry, guys, I mean to interrupt, but once in a while I get a co-host join my show. So keep talking.
Hello.
Yeah, he'll leave soon. But yeah, sorry. It's yeah.
No, sure, no problem. I'm pretty sure he has a question or two, but
That's why he came barging through the door. He's been banging on the door for the last 5 minutes. I have to ask Gaston a question. So he
well,
came.
that's
Yeah.
another thing you probably want to ask me, which is that comes to the third learning, which is focus. Right? Look how
Mm.
focused he is. This is very important. Like, especially kids, children at that age, generally they absorb everything, right? And I think when we reach a certain level as an entrepreneur, you want to absorb everything, because we have that kind of like intrinsic curiosity. But it's also very important to focus. For example, a big learning is, it's very important to say, okay, even though you are an entrepreneur, you're a founder, you start seeing opportunities all over the place. And that's good and not good at the same time. It's good because it allows you to look further and to imagine a world that the majority are not able to imagine. But also, it's kind of like, you need to be careful about that, because you should not pursue every potential road, because you end up having, let's say, 5 plans that are all average versus 2 very good plans. So yeah, that's another lesson as well, if you can summarize.
So Gaston, I was gonna say, let's maybe switch gears, talk a little bit about your aha moment. So when did you first realize that AI was no longer, a future tech, but an immediate necessity?
Yeah. I mean, this brings me back to university. So again, 15 years ago, where you could basically, back then I said data science. We didn't have the compute power that you are having today. As I always say, I mean, ChatGPT and Gemini and all of that, all of these models more or less existed before, but compute power, that strength of compute power did not exist before. Like, you could not run models this fast and have answers this fast and so on. So when I was in university learning like data science and artificial intelligence, and you could see like how a machine can store way more data than we human beings. It started being like, oh, okay, so if it can store, and back then academically, kind of intelligence was very linked to how much you can memorize information. And we're like, oh, okay, so if the intelligence is memorizing information, then we are very dumb because the machines can memorize so much more information. But it's about the triangulation of how the machine actually, the CPU of our head is kind of like triangulating everything together. And that was for me, is like, okay, look, if you can store all that information and like ingest it at the same time with a machine, you will be able to do way more than a human being, at least in terms of thinking and so on. But at the same time, your little kid there is able to process way more data than any model AI produced today. Because if you show him Gassen 3 times, fourth time he will recognize Gassen. Even the second time he will recognize Gassen. Now, show any AI model the same event, like, I don't know, 2, 3 times, probably it needs way more training to get to the level to recognize the same thing. And that's why you have all those labels and so on. I mean, like a lot of workforce today is just labeling whatever, pictures, images, events, IDs, whatever, right? Because AI is strong, but not as strong as our brain. And that also some sort of a continuous moment each time I see even myself building models for my business or before for other businesses. You can see like things are going so fast that basically we are empowered. We have superpowers with those AI models, and what we can build today with our own existing data. And the more data we get, the smarter we get. And that to me is just in itself, like, it's been day one where I'm seeing this and more. I use the AI in credit risk assessment. I use the AI in pricing for pharma. Use the AI for pricing for insurance. The list is very long. So it just, I think we're just scratching the surface. This is just the beginning.
Fascinating. Hey, man, so let's maybe switch gears and talk a little bit about, so what is the innovation crisis that your company, Incivio, is solving?
Yeah, I mean, look, as I spent the last 15 years at the intersection of fintech and in machine learning AI, especially as a fintech operator, most of the time you are busy with the plumbing part, meaning AML, KYC, adoption, and so on. And you think users are there, they know what they're doing, right? If someone is registering into a trading platform or a crypto exchange or whatever, they know, right? Well, the reality is far from that. So, which means having users and having revenue become like two separate things. And that's where we came in with the idea of Incivio with my two co-founders. We basically developed a tech stack that sits between the user and the product. And the vision is that, it doesn't make sense that today the user still needs to adapt to products. So if you connect to, say, crypto exchange A and crypto exchange B, there are still like different UIs, different buttons, and so on. A new user need to figure out that. It does not make sense. What I think the future is going to, and this is where we're building Incivio, is they will be having basic products, and then comes Incivio on top as a layer that adapts each product to each individual user separately. And that all agentically. So basically, take an example of a crypto exchange, you plug in Incivio, and all of a sudden, you and me are having a complete different experience, even though it's the same product. It's just that Incivio agentically, it's reading our context graph and decision traces, basically user behavior and how we are interacting with the product, to adapt it to each one of us. Like if I am a quantitative and you are more visual, I'll see more numbers, you'll see more graphs, as an example, you see.
Oh, wow. Okay. You adapt to that level.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. No, I when we first talked, I seriously thought that it was more like arrows, like click here, click there, versus I didn't realize like the entire user experience, like every pixel is almost reimagined for the user. That's crazy.
Obviously, I mean, we are at the start. You will start with the arrow,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
yeah.
glowing, with sidebars, with tooltips, and
Right.
so on. You need to
Got
start
it.
somewhere, but that's where we are heading. And think about this
Interesting.
future in the VR perspective, in the AR perspective. It's just like, it will. it will be so personalized, so contextualized that it will be part of your reality. It will be something normal you're embarking to. So that's the idea, and that's, in my opinion, where the huge upside, not only for our customers but for humanity in general, will appear. Especially if you think of dimensions like, financial literacy, for example. So many people are taking decisions, financial decisions, without really a background. So that makes it very dangerous for them. And then obviously you can think of multiple verticals, like any product where a user is interacting with the technology.
So your vision includes modernizing workplace learning, right? So what does I guess a smart office look like in 2030 in your view?
Well, I mean, learning is definitely one of the dimensions. I view learning as one of the end point of the API of our brains. Sorry if it's too technical, but basically we have different channels, human beings, to absorb information. It happened like in the past, one of those channels, we call them learning, right? So it's, again, I'm a bit too conceptual here. And ultimately, everything you do, everything your kiddo is doing now is learning. We are learning all the time, right? So what I'm imagining here is a future where learning becomes something like normal. Like, you don't need to sit down and read a book to learn something. We speak a lot about learning by doing. Within learning by doing, there is the doing part, right? So you need to start doing stuff, but at the same time, certain things, like especially, for example, in financial products, I mean, the mistake of a doing can be huge, right? So you cannot play with that. You can do learning by doing and stuff, or let's say a pilot of a plane, or just driving a car. You cannot just say, "Hey, I learned by doing," right? So you need to create that layer for a user, not only to learn but also to reach the goal. Because again, if you come back to a crypto exchange experience, I mean, if you're logging in there, you want to exchange your crypto, buy crypto, whatever, that's your end goal. You're not connecting there to learn how crypto is and what does it do and so on. You have whatever fiat, or you have crypto A, you want to go to crypto B, right? So you have a goal. And that's where we mistakenly today confuse like learning and doing, right? Because it's a balance. You don't just want to learn to learn. You want to achieve a goal, and that's what Enseview help. How Enseview help its customers with their users, because it helps them achieve that goal. That's why we're speaking about an agentic revenue engine. We're not just like about engagement or helping people learn. No, you need to have a goal behind that.
Cool. That's amazing, guys. And this is fascinating. We're about 17 minutes. I usually do around like a short one, but I would love to have you on. I also, is it your co-founder? Is her name Anna?
Yes, and
I
that was
had her
part
on
of
the
the
show.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, people seem to really enjoyed it. So I love the idea. I know we're talking behind the scenes about partnering together on some things. I'm really excited about what you guys are working on. And maybe just finish up by telling a little bit about like your website, where people can learn maybe more about your thoughts if you blog or, LinkedIn or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, Sunny, for the invitation again. If anyone is interested to having a chat about the future of agentic revenue engines here, happy to have an exchange about that. So just reach me out on LinkedIn. You find Gassan Benatsala, or ncivio.com, INNCIVIO.com. You find everything there. I'm reachable, and really keen to learn your thoughts about what we're building.